to hear from you. And our topic is students with disabilities. Uncle Sam needs you too. So, thank you for coming.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to kick this off and tell you a little bit about some of the things that are happening in the federal government and why we wanted to actually do a session specifically focusing on students or graduates with disabilities, because we're lucky enough to be working for a president who actually cares about this issue and has signed an executive order, and that's him signing it, on July 26, 2010, the 20th anniversary of the signing of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And I want to give you just a bit of an overview of the executive order. The executive order is a document that the president signs that has the full impact of law. And it tells the federal agencies a couple of things. It says, number one, I want you to be the model employer when it comes to hiring people with disabilities. You aren't that yet. Despite years of being required to have an affirmative employment program for people with disabilities under the Rehab Act of 1973, despite having that obligation, you have not done a good job of increasing employment opportunities for people with disabilities. So now I'm signing an executive order that says, while I'm president, you need to do this. And so he's asked federal agencies to increase the employment opportunities by 100,000 over the next 5 years. And he told agencies to focus specifically on people with disabilities and people with what we call targeted disabilities. And now you'll really know I'm from Boston when I say words like that, right? I parked my car in Harvard Yard. The targeted disabilities are really what we would call people with severe disabilities. And we actually collect data, and Dexter will talk a little bit about this, around focusing on how to get people with severe disabilities, who are arguably the most underemployed of people with disabilities. And also we use as a barometer of some sort to actually measure how are we doing with our outreach and our recruitment of people with disabilities. If we're getting a lot of people with severe disabilities into the government as well as other people with disabilities, then we're doing a good job. And I got to tell you, up until now, we haven't been doing a good job on either front, but worse so when it comes to hiring people with severe disabilities. So you're going to do Schedule A, right? Are you going to do Schedule A? No? Yes? No? Tell me. It doesn't matter.
You talking to me?
Yeah. I didn't want to encroach if I was.
No.
All right, good, all right.
It's an OPM program.
So, all right, good, all right. So the president actually said, in addition to that he wanted to make sure agencies developed a good plan on how they were going to do this, and those plans are due to us next week. He also said that he wants us to do mandatory training, especially on increasing the use of something called Schedule A. And Schedule A is actually a mechanism by which federal agencies are able to actually hire people with disabilities, and there's the definition. It's a hiring authority that allows them to hire people with, and those were the old words that used to be in it. We just changed it not too long ago, and it says people with intellectual disabilities, severe physical disabilities, or psychiatric disabilities. Well, we changed it on the 256. But it actually gives the agencies the authority to hire non-competitively and appoint people, and then once they go through a probation period, convert them into full-time employees. Non-competitive is the key here. This allows federal agencies to hire someone very quickly, in a matter of days if they want to, into a position that you're qualified to fill. And it could be a permanent job, it could be temporary, it could be time limited, and they're in what's called the accepted service. And what that means is that you are brought in a non-competitive way. There's other people that fit other categories of being able to come in a non-competitive way, but it is pretty unique. And it really is an effort to make sure that people have a quick access in so that we do a better job of actually recruiting and hiring people and increasing the numbers of people with disabilities. So federal agencies, as I said, haven't been the greatest. Our statistics are kind of lousy on hiring people with disabilities, and in fact decreased over a number of years. I would predict, hopefully, that this year we actually saw the numbers didn't go down. It actually flatlined and stayed even. And I would predict that this year we're going to start seeing the graph go up because of the executive order, and the agencies have now, increasing their attention to hiring people with disabilities and using Schedule A. We have some great brochures here that we're going to give out to folks, but this actually gives you practical tips on how to apply for a federal job using Schedule A. Because a lot of times you might be applying for a job and the person you're talking to isn't really aware of Schedule A. Sad but true. You might be talking to a hiring manager in an agency that actually says, gee, I don't know much about that. What are you talking about? And you say, well, as a person with a disability, I'm eligible to apply under Schedule a non-competitive process. You could hire me quickly. You could advance your hiring times because hiring reform is telling agencies that they have to hire quicker and faster into the federal government. So this meets that as well. And it tells you what you need to provide in order to say, I want to be eligible for Schedule A. You actually have to provide documentation that you have a disability and that you're basically ready to be able to do a job. And that's where Rebecca comes in. She'll talk to you a little bit about how her agency can supply you with the documentation you need, because vocational rehab services in every state, the VA, Social Security, a doctor, a medical professional of any kind can actually provide you with the documentation that you need. And these brochures really spell out exactly what you need to know. In addition to Schedule A, and in helping agencies increase their awareness and training regarding the use of Schedule A, we've also gone a little step further this time, and we actually talked to all of what's called the Chief Human Capital Offices of the executive agencies. The heads of personnel or HR in the federal government, the Chief Human Capital Offices, form a council that meets once a month at the Office of Personnel Management. And in a discussion with them, we said, what can we do to make it easy for you to find good candidates? Because, all right, people with disabilities, hold on here. You know what they say sometimes? We would love to hire people with disabilities, we just can't find them. Huh? Yeah, imagine that. So we said, well, if you just can't find them, what if you tell us the jobs that you need to fill, right? What are the turnover jobs that you're constantly needing to find people with disabilities for, or any employee for? And what if we actually found those people for you, we vetted them, interviewed them, and verified that they're qualified to do the job you want, and then we give you the list. What would you say to that? And they said that would be fabulous. And they picked the jobs that were common to all the federal agencies. So this isn't the only way to get into the federal government. This is just one tiny tool that we're using. We actually contracted with a company called Bender Consulting. There's a woman in Pittsburgh, her name's Joyce Bender. And unfortunately, a lot of times she will come and actually speak at an event like this, and she couldn't be here today. But she runs a company. She's a woman with a disability who had a great background in executive search, and after she acquired her disability, which is epilepsy, she started to think, hey, what happens to people with disabilities? All of a sudden she couldn't drive. She needed someone to help drive her to work. She still had a job because she owned her own company, but she started to actually realize, hey, there's a whole group of people out there that don't have an opportunity to work. And she started talking to her clients who were CEOs of big companies, saying, do you hire people with disabilities? And if you don't, why not? And she started having this frank discussion with her because they weren't threatened by her in any way. And they started to open up to her and say, well, gee, I'm afraid that they really wouldn't be qualified. Oh, gee, I'm afraid they'll take one time off. Gee, I'm afraid. And so she actually started a company recruiting people with disabilities. And she knew from the very start, as she did with her when it was, hiring, finding people in her executive search firm, that her reputation would be staked on how qualified the person was that she delivered to the company. So she's not gonna send someone to an interview at a company that isn't qualified to do the job. They may not hire them, but they won't argue that they aren't qualified, because that's her reputation, and they wouldn't be asking her to work for them again or find anyone for them if she didn't deliver good people. So she applied the same principles to people with disabilities, and we learned of her from not only the CEOs of a bunch of private companies, but a couple of agencies that use her almost exclusively to find people with disabilities for their workforce. And one of those is the National Security Agency. NSA hires a good number of people with disabilities. They learned early on that there's an untapped pool of talent. They have very strict requirements for, whatever the qualifications are, usually something in the area of engineering and math, in technology. They have very much higher requirements with regard to personnel, security clearances, things like that. Your parents can't be foreign born. They have much more stringent rules than the other federal agencies because of the work that they do. And they basically said to her, here's all our rules. If you can find people with disabilities, and we don't care what kind of disability they have, because we know we can accommodate anything. We're looking for the brains. That's what we're looking for. We don't care what the package is that people, come in, which was fabulous. I mean, for an agency to be basically saying, that doesn't, we can solve any problem with that, with regard to accommodations. We're looking for a person that has these skills, and we don't care about their disability, which was just amazing. So we learned about that, and then we actually talked to her and contracted with her ultimately to get this list together. So these are, just some of the things that I've already talked about, her private sector experience. We contracted with her to put this list together of applicants. She screens and then directs a minimum of 50 people with disabilities on a monthly basis, a drop in the bucket, but the agencies that are now using this list, and I guarantee you there's some agencies that traditionally didn't hire a lot of people with disabilities, they're finding fabulous people. And we send that out to the agencies twice a month. Is that it? Oh, there we go. These are the types of jobs that the Chief Human Capital Officer Council said that we want to be on that list. It doesn't mean that you have to have those skills to be on that list. She's also screening other people and putting you on the list if you're really good in a certain field, so that the agencies have an ability to see something broader than what they ask for. In addition to that, there are now some agencies that are contracting with her directly to actually do some specialized search for them. So the Department of Justice has recently reached out to her. They want her to recruit attorneys with disabilities who have either civil rights backgrounds or an interest in working in civil rights. And so that's happening. IRS just contacted her. I saw an email last night. They want her to recruit IT specialists for them, but in certain geographic areas. So there's a lot of activity, and I won't even go through how she actually, well, maybe I should, how she actually, her process. They do an application, they interview, they check references. They do everything that they would do for the private sector as well, and then you make it on the list. She recruits from a variety of places. I'm going to skip through. These are actually the best contact information. John Bennison works for me at OPM, and he's actually on a detail from another agency, and he's going back. So don't write him down, because in another couple of weeks, that's not going to be helpful. But at Bender Consulting, Mary Brocker, and Sherry Homey, either one of those, get your resumes to them. Contact them, say you're interested in a job in the federal government, and they will be talking to you. I can guarantee you that. All right, we're going to just do this quick thing, each one of us, and leave a lot of time for questions and answers and discussion with you, because we think that's usually more productive. So I'm going to turn this over to Rebecca.
Good afternoon. I'm here to talk a little bit about, and just make you familiar if you're not familiar with the Department of Assistive and Rehabilitative Services, which is the state vocational rehabilitation agency that assists individuals with disabilities secure employment. And we do that through several different ways. You have to have an eligibility to be able to be eligible for our services, and I can tell you what eligibility is, the criteria. It's very basic. You have to have a disability, and that disability must be an impediment to employment, and services will be able to remove that impediment to make you employable, and then most importantly, you want to go to work. But the reason I'm here to visit with you today is, one, to make you aware of the organization, but also to let you know that VR is a certifying agency. We are able to write Schedule A letters to submit to federal employers for consideration on behalf of people who are applying for jobs. As was mentioned earlier, there are many ways by which to receive a letter, a Schedule A letter certifying you as an individual with a disability, so that you can have this consideration for employment within federal government. But VR is one agency that is able to do that for you. We offer a lot of other services within vocational rehabilitation. We're able to provide training and placement assistance. We're able to provide assistance with education. We have OJT situations that we can create, all based on skills, abilities, and interests of the individual with a disability. We look at your background, we look at transitional skills. We serve individuals with all types of disability. The Department of Assistive and Rehabilitative Services has two divisions, which is the Department of Rehab Services and then the Division for Blind Services. So together we serve every disability. So anyone who has a disability and is seeking assistance and maybe needs additional guidance, maybe needs additional time to secure work skills. Another thing I do want to mention is we want to make sure that as you're considering federal government, that you're also considering internships within the federal government, because that really allows you an opportunity to secure skills that may be needed for a particular job. Not only does it do that, but it also opens a door that for possible permanent employment. It also opens a door with partner agencies if for some reason that particular internship program ceases and there's not a position for you to permanently remain. We're like the state government and federal government is like any other entity. We talk and we share information, and someone may be aware of an opportunity over here, and while your internship was done at this location, this particular agency needs someone and they're looking for just those skills that you learned with your internship. So please consider internships as a possibility for you. Again, I just want to make you aware of vocational rehabilitation, of the agency that's available to you as an individual with a disability. I'm going to give you a 1-800 number because I'm not going to assume that everyone is from San Antonio. So I'm going to give you a 1-800 number that will refer you to the right office that can best serve you should you have more questions, should you be interested in applying for services, or you need more information. And I'll be available to all of you afterward or as we have our question and answer session to answer any questions you may have. But the number you might want to call is 1-800-628-5115, and our TTY line is 1-866-581-9328. And I just want to thank my panel partners for allowing me to join them this afternoon. And again, I'll be here to answer any additional questions you might have about vocational rehabilitation or how we can help assist you get into some employment utilizing Schedule A.